A brief note before I begin. In speaking of unmasking the stigma surrounding mental illness, when I reference taking off our masks, I'm referring to the invitation to remove the socially acceptable, cleaned up versions of ourselves that we put on in order to prevent our struggles from being seen. As it relates to actual masks designed to protect us and our neighbors from the spread of COVID-19, please keep yours on as we mask up Minnesota. And now, a night to shine, unmasking mental illness. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert, repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. An excerpt from Wild Geese by Mary Oliver. December 4th, 2020 was a crisp winter day, warmed by a knowing sun. Together, Jordan Tomerdal's parents, Kay and Stu, family including sister Sarah, with Ty and Owen, and brothers Javante and Paul, along with Kelly and Summer, Colton and Larkin, Grandma Shirley, and others, along with his girlfriend Taylor, the Island guys, and so many dear friends, all gathered at Jordan's graveside to bury his body. Placed appropriately right on the edge of the woods and the wetland, I found myself turning to the woods and the trees and the sky during his graveside ceremony. As I listened to the wind, I heard Jordan's laughter, and when a flock of wild geese rose into flight, tears gathered in my eyes as I smiled to myself and whispered, "Fly free, dear brother." And I spoke to him Mary Oliver's words, and to the geese with whom his spirit was dancing and flying. I suppose this is why, in anticipation of today, I found myself returning to the words of Mary Oliver in Wild Geese. For in many ways, Mary and Jordan are and were kindred spirits, lovers of nature and life, with the ability to see beauty and simplicity in the wonder of all things. People who knew what it was to live without pretense, without masks, and without socks to prevent our feet from feeling the ground beneath us. They are people who have inspired us to live alive and to love with reckless abandon. And in truth, it is because of these memories and the connection between Mary and Jordan that I began with Mary's words from Wild Geese this night. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. But I also started here because I think this poem speaks to all of us gathered this night about mental illness on this night to shine. For as the poem continues, tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Tonight, I ask that you consider the invitation that mental health and the struggle to stay upright in a world that is so often designed to take us out. This is not something that is blighted upon just some of us. No, this struggle and despair and pain is something that all of our stories reveal. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. On a lot of levels, I get why we have cultural stigmas. They are part of our very human condition. We struggle to make sense of illness, and so often we have been tutored to fear our own suffering and struggle and illness and pain. But if we are going to reduce the stigma about mental illness, it requires of us a necessary journey to admitting that there is no us, the healthy ones, and them, the sick ones. No, the human condition of shallow breathing, mind wrecked by grief and trauma, reaching for wholeness and longing for love to save us. This is the human condition. This is our condition. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. For when we can't turn to one another with love and compassion, and when we cannot turn to those wounds that our own bodies bear witness to, when we cannot speak of the despair that we each hold, we then scapegoat others, externalizing the pain that we don't know how to tend to in ourselves. Let me give a very present day example of this. When I consider our widely diverging responses to COVID-19, I am struck by how the reality that much of our refusal to admit its horror, to grieve the losses of our daily rhythms and holiday routines, is because so many of us are barely hanging on. We, like addicts in need of the next hit of activity, white knuckle our lives in terror of what the silence and the pain might expose and what it might do to us. As if our refusal to turn towards the truth makes it any less real. And yet, we humans, we're wired to do this as our way to survive. Hear me. I don't say this to shame any of us. I mean, I'm human too. I do the same things. I have good reasons why my personality has been larger than life. I have reasons why I am always busy and achieving. My denial and overperformance is tied to the pain and the grief I carry in my own story. It's about my own deep longing to be seen and to belong. It's my running away as fast as I can from the demons who tell me I am not and will never be enough. So tonight, as we seek to unmask the stigma surrounding mental illness, I want to echo Mary Oliver's words. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. For the invitation to unmask the stigmas about mental health is the call of love to each of us to take off our own masks and share our despair with one another, to let the soft animal of our bodies love what they love, and to cease walking hundreds of miles through deserts on our knees, repenting. For as we do this, as we name our despair, as we risk the terror of letting love see and heal us, we are open to love, and we can drop the need to stigmatize the overflow of the struggle which is made manifest in those of us who are most struggling. And in doing so, by caring for our own pain, we can then move toward one another in love, for we know there is no other. There is no us and them. There is just us, one community of all of us beautifully frail and wonderful humans who are broken and yet healed and held and cared for in and by love, as the poem continues. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across landscapes over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, we are called to drop our own masks, to come out from behind them, and to foster safe and supportive spaces where others can do likewise. For mental illness, as I said at Jordan's funeral, it's just like any other illness. Think of cancer. To hear the word itself, cancer, causes fear. And yet we know that some kind of cancers are more livable than others. Stage 2 melanoma, for instance, is far different to hear than stage 4 pancreas cancer. So let me be clear. Mental illness, like any other kind of illness, isn't anyone's fault. Some of us here in this virtual gathering will get and or are living right now with mental illness of one form or another due to trauma, due to pain, grief, the wiring of our brains. And through medication, therapy, and other supports, we are able to live and to flourish even as we struggle. Even as sometimes the illness is so steep, just like stage 4 pancreas cancer, that people die from their illness, as did our dear brother Jordan. And if we want to reduce the stigma, we both need to admit that we struggle as we hold grief and despair in our own stories. For we reduce stigma by coming out from behind our masks. And we also reduce the stigma against mental illness by normalizing mental health as a category of illness, just like the others we have learned and are learning to embrace. For mental health has nothing to do with categories of sin or selfishness or morality. No, none of us would blame anyone for health conditions that they cannot help, right? Not a one of us would dare to blame a person for cancer, right? Right. Likewise, to end the stigma about mental health asks us to see mental health as an illness, just like any others. And our response to illness ought to be love, to support, to make casseroles, to buy Grubhub certificates, and to advocate so that our healthcare systems can have the resources that they need to show up and to care for mental illness, just as it does for heart issues, broken bones, and cancer. Mary again invites us. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. And meanwhile, we, here tonight, a gathered people, do you know what? In a world that is torn apart by political divisions and riven with the rage of undealt with trauma and grief, we are a people who have chosen to show up, to love, and to say we believe in a hope and in a world of the possible, a world in which stigma doesn't have the only fact of our world, a world where the helpers and the lovers and the friends and the community remembers that we are the hope, that we are the possibility of another way of being human, a world where we refuse the categories of us and them, a world in which neighbors show up for one another, a world in which medicine is for our healing. And so I want to pause to name this and to honor you, my friends, for this. This is how change comes. This is how stigmas end. This is how healing comes. It is through people who have said no to the status quo and instead say yes to the dreams of possible things. And your showing up tonight is an act of loving resistance. And in so doing, you carry forward Jordan's legacy to be a people who invite everyone in, to be a people who believe in smiles and in joy, and that there are no enemies, just people who don't yet know they're our friends. To come tonight is to say that you affirm that love is a healing balm and the most powerful force in the world. Your presence affirms a belief that at the end of all things, that as we face the pain and the struggle and the despair, we take up the call not to be good or to put on masks to insulate ourselves, pretend we're fine, just fine, yeah, fine. But we refuse the idea that we need a scapegoat because we are too afraid to turn towards our own pain. No, instead, This is a place where we remember to return to the edge of the field, to the wetland, to enter the wild, to come to the woods with curiosity and abandon, and to fly high on the wings of the wild geese, to come home again to one another and to ourselves, to take off our masks, to remove our socks, and to come together so we might build another world where the masks melt away and where we can all live, love, unafraid. This, to me, is the truth of Jordan's death and the call of his life. This is our night to shine our lights, to take off the masks, to take off our socks, to walk barefoot into the woods alive and to fly together as part of one family, supporting one another and remembering Mary once again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls to you like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. Might we give generously tonight, remembering we're all part of this beautiful world together, to love and to care. Meet me here then, at the edge of the woods, and let us fly together and create a world that cares for us all. Thank you for your presence, your generosity, and most of all, thanks for believing that together we will create a world with love enough for us all. With gratitude to Jordan and to Mary, may you both fly freely, trusting that we've got you. Together, we will end the stigma about mental health. Together, we will shine the light. And together, we will build a home that is safe for all of us. Thank you.